Okay, welcome everybody. It's, I don't know what day it is. It's the 9th of June, I think. And welcome to the House Agriculture and Forestry Committee. I'm Representative Carolyn Partridge, and we're here to talk about the COVID relief money for dairy farmers and processors. We're trying to formulate our proposal for House Approps regarding the money, and we had a rather lively discussion on Friday. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about what we're going to do. We heard a day or two before, I guess it was that Thursday, actually before Friday, that we were to be limited to $20 million. The original proposal from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets was $50 million. I don't know about you all, but I've heard from a number of folks in the last few days, a number of farmers and processors asking to increase that amount. I've had an email conversation with the speaker, and she has indicated that there is some flexibility. So my proposal is that we proceed with the bill that we had been working on and somehow work into it some flexibility, or what I would call latitude, so that if just depending on what's available to us, that we we use the money as we can. So there was a pretty thoughtful schedule of how money would be dispersed for our dairy farmers, which was by farm size, and in terms of the processors, depending on the amount of the weight of milk that one processed. And so Mike O'Grady's not with us, so I can't verify this with him, but I suspect that the numbers that were produced were sort of backed into. And while I want this to be sort of methodical, I also would like to have some flexibility regarding the amount. And so, do you all know what I'm talking about here? You understand what I'm trying to say? If the original schedule of payments basically backed into $50 million or vice versa, and we only have 20 to spend, we're going to have to change those amounts. And I just want some flexibility in whatever we send to appropriations. Does that make some sense? Any hands up? Anybody want to chime in?
I do.
All right, John O'Brien, your hand is up, and Vicky. John?
Yep. Oh, there we go. So one thing was that of that original 50, we debated and vetted of the 40 going to dairy farmers and the 10 to value-added processors. Two other things have come up in the interim, sort of between that number and the 20, with a possible 10 down the road. One was the working lands sort of going forward appropriation to think about just big picture dairy in Vermont. And the other was, I think what the speaker brought up, was the non-dairy farms would get that 4 to 7 potentially. So I just wondered what you and the committee, what thoughts there were on that.
Okay, we can discuss that. Vicky?
Yes, hi. And Carolyn, I think I do understand what you're saying. And in our proposal, I still feel we need to ask for a closer idea of what we actually had already talked about with the agency. And in other words, I'm not settling for 20. And I just, maybe you could help me understand this a little better, what you're saying.
Okay, well, I think I can answer that pretty directly, if not, probably not easily, but I can't give you an exact amount, Vicky. What was expressed in the letter from the speaker is that other committees had been allocated chunks of money, like $5 million, I believe the number was, and they may or may not be able to use that money. So if there is money available, we could potentially have some of that. So I don't know what that's going to end up looking like. And that's why I would just ask for a little bit of flexibility.
I understand the idea of a little bit of flexibility, but 20 million versus 50 is a pretty big difference. And I'm just not willing to settle for that much less. That's just kind of my line in the sand. And I spent a long time on the phone with some of these farmers, and several were in tears. And
Yes.
it's not funny, and it's not flexible in my mind. It's downright urgent and desperate. And there are other people out there asking for money, but this is huge. I'm just not really even willing to think flexible. I'm willing to say, no, I'm sorry, this is a priority for Vermont and for our dairy farmers, period. That's kind of where I stand.
I hear you. And I spoke to the same people that you spoke to. I spoke with the same woman who was in tears, and it was pretty upsetting for me.
Yeah, it is.
So I can't tell you, we could say we want $50 million, 40 for the dairy farmers and 10 for the processors. I just don't know if we're going to get it. And so I've spoken to members of appropriations, and I think that the best we can do, Vicky, at this point is put in what was originally presented, and in terms of the schedule of payments, and then we do have to have the conversation about working lands and the diversified farming, but we I think we turn this over to appropriations to do their best job to figure out the money.
And I understand that. And I know it's a process, Carolyn, and maybe panic is premature, because maybe we will be able to get a lot closer to what we're hoping. But just one more thing I want to say to advocate for dairy farmers, and that is that cows are a different type of farming, and they just need a large amount of food and veterinary care. And they produce an amazing product that's very perishable and needs processing quickly. And it's just a different type of farming altogether than, let's say, vegetables or goats or whatever. So I'm just advocating as much as I possibly can, that I want to ask for as much as we can on this committee for the dairy.
Thanks, Vicky. Tom?
Madam Chair, just to be clear, you're thinking the committee should ask for the original 50, and with a caveat that says we're asking for flexibility with this, or are we going to ask for the 20 plus flexibility? I'm not understanding what the ask is.
Well, I'm thinking that we don't actually include an amount, or if we do include amount, we can say what the original proposal was and what has been suggested. I'm not quite sure what's appropriate. And Mike O'Grady, you're here now, thank goodness. And you might have an idea about this. We've been talking about the proposal that's going to go to appropriations. And I sent you an email regarding latitude, and to sort of clarify, I think most of us would like $50 million for this proposal, but we understand that that might not be available. And so working that flexibility in terms of the schedule, sorry about my phone, the schedule that was laid out in the original proposal might not work in terms of, what ends up being available.
So my understanding is that there is available to the House committee $20 million in what's called tier 1 money, and then $10 million in what's being referred to as tier 2 money. If you want flexibility to use the tier 2 money, I think we just need to create some language that says, you know, by some certain date, if that money becomes available, then the agency is authorized to use it under the dairy assistance program. If you're talking about more than that money, I would think we have to figure out a way to I need to know what you think the source of that money will be. Do you?
Well, in my email conversations with the speaker, which I think you were copied on, it was expressed by her that there might be additional funds available depending on what other committees use or don't use. And so, you know, I just like to be able to offer as much as we possibly can to the dairy farmers who, you know, have called us and they're desperate. One woman told me that she had lost $65,000 in each of her last 2 milk checks. So
I think you have multiple options. One option is that you could keep or set the award amounts at whatever amount you wanted, but then provide that the program is a first come, first served program, and that the secretary shall expend or award funds up and until the money runs out at those funding amounts. The other option is to look at the award amounts and rework them so that it fits underneath whatever appropriation you have. Remember, this is designed as a reimbursement program. They get reimbursed for their losses and expenses. So there may not be farms that currently have costs or expenses that reach the maximum. I expect most will, but I'm just saying that there's opportunity that some farms won't hit the maximum grant. The Senate committee was working with a $30 million cap, and they came up with a proposal where 19 million will be used for milk producers and dairy processors. 3.8 will be used for other agricultural producers and processors. And actually, let me back up. 19 million will be used for milk producers, 3.8 will be used for dairy processors, and 7 million will be used for other agricultural producers and processors. And then 200,000 will be appropriated to VHCB to provide additional technical business and mental health assistance to farmers due to COVID. So that's what they did. They went and they broke down the numbers. They broke down the a couple of the tiers and worked the numbers until they could settle on something that they were happy with. You could do the same thing.
Is there any way, given the fact that we don't know what the final total might be, to come up with some sort of flexibility? Like, you know, I understand we're gonna have to have some conversations about the other producers and WeLab and VHCB money, but let's say 25 or 30 million becomes available to us in the tier 1. And we decide that we want that to go to dairy farmers and processors. Is there a way to craft the bill to allow that flexibility in case that number changes? in approps. We're not going to settle on a number. Potentially, we're going to pass a bill or pass our proposal onto approps and let them come up with the best number based on what other committees need and what other, and what ends up being available.
Well, if you don't have a target, you can't back into that by revising the maximum grant amounts. So you either have to say you'll back into it in appropriations, or you're just going to go with the first come, first serve model.
Okay, but we could say we're going to back into it based on what comes out of appropriations.
Sure. I mean, if appropriation somehow changes the monetary amount back to 40 million, then you can leave the amounts as what the administration proposed, and you really don't have to do anything. But if say they only give you an extra $5 million and you don't want it to be based on a first come, first serve, the money runs out when the money runs out, then you're going to have to figure out what those maximum grant amounts are going to be, so that everyone potentially will be served.
Okay, all right, we can talk more. I've got several hands up, so I'll go to the hands and then we can talk more about how we might work that out. So Tom Bach, you're up first.
Carolyn, in the speaker's letter, was the 20 million a line in the sand from her? Did I get that? And then towards the end of the letter, it sounded to me like if there's flexibility later, did I read that wrong?
My understanding of that, and my reading of it, is that the 20 million was a target that was iterative. I think those were her words. And that if there was, if other committees did not use the money that they had been allocated, that potentially there would be more money available.
Okay.
Are you all set?
Yeah.
Okay. I have John Bartholomew, then Terry, then Rodney, then Vicky. So John Bartholomew.
It strikes me that first come, first serve is inherently unfair. It doesn't seem like something I would be happy with. And also, I think it also feels foolishly optimistic to think a committee is going to have money available and not use it all. Maybe I'm just being typically pessimistic, but it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I'm wondering why we can't write it with, the original was 50 million. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we put those amounts in, can't we just make it the language say, if less money is available, do it by the percentages? I mean, is there a reason we wouldn't want to go with the straight percentages and have it divvied up in the same proportions?
Is that
Yes,
possible, Mike?
you could say that the maximum grant amount will be reduced by the same percentage as the reduction in the appropriation. That's fine. That's fine. Ultimately, the language that will come out of appropriations will just be the appropriated amount with the maximum awards reduced by that percentage.
There might be a reason we wouldn't want to just go with straight percentages, but it's certainly the simplest approach in my mind.
That actually sounds really good to me, John. Are you all set? Okay, Terry?
I think as the Agriculture and Forestry Committee, we owe it to the farmers to ask for as much as we can. If we send it to approps asking for what we feel is the correct amount for dairy farmers, we have done their job, our job, and then they're going to do their job irregardless of what we ask for anyway. So I think that to at least show that we support agriculture in Vermont, that we should ask for what we can. I agree with John that probably a percentage of would be the best way to go. I don't like the first come first serve at all. There's just, that's very problematic. But I've heard from a lot of people, as I'm sure everybody else has, that time is of the essence. This time of year, planting and fertilizing and harvesting is the most expensive time of the year for farmers. And here they are getting the least amount for their milk. So I don't think we have a lot of time to dally with this. Hopefully we can make something work. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. All right, next up is Rodney. Rodney, and if you guys could put your hands down after you've spoken, that'd be great.
Yeah, so kind of John and Terry have kind of pretty much said what I was going to say too, but I think that I agree that we need to get something out as fast as we can, quickly as we can. And I don't know if we can set this up so that we ask for the 50 million and understanding that we have to do a percentage, but if there's more money available by a certain date, we can send out a second round of money based on the same program, or if that's an option or not. But
Well, that's basically what the tier 2 concept is, that if in August, after the economic forecast and after Congress has potentially addressed whether or not CRF money can be used to backfill lost revenue, if there's still money available, then either the legislature, joint fiscal committee, or some entity approves the use of a certain amount of money for the program. That's the concept of tier 2, and JFO and a couple of people in our office are trying to figure out some default language for tier 2, because it's not just your committee that has a tier 2 task. All committees have a tier 2 kind of allocation.
okay, so I think my point, it agrees somewhat with what Terry is saying, is that, I mean, we can hold out for the 50 million, but it's pretty highly unlikely that we're going to get it right off the bat. But these farmers need help now, and somehow if we can get whatever money we have out to them, it's not perfect. Even the 50 million is not enough, but anything could be a help.
Thanks, Rodney. All right, Vicky, and then John O'Brien, and then Tom. I don't know if Tom's hand is up again, or if you, okay, it's up again. All right, yep.
So I think we absolutely have to ask for what we've already worked hard on with the agency and just stick with that. And the whole term of what might be available is a little disingenuous in the terms of the speaker's policy to hold back this money. There is money available, and I believe that passionately. And if we don't stick with our 50 million and just say they have to have this, they need it, not now, they needed it yesterday or 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. I don't see any wiggle room for me anyway, and I'm just sticking with the 50 million, and that's my line in the sand.
Thanks, Vicky. John O'Brien.
I don't know, did Rodney go away, or, oh, there he is. I think I can see him.
Yeah,
I
no,
just
he's
wanted
here.
An update on, is it CFAP, Rodney? Because I know you applied, and I hope the agency is sort of walking through our 650 dairy farmers on that program. and just wondering when that money might actually get to them in hand. And the other question would be for Mike, was that is there just going to be one big sort of CRF bill, or is there a chance for us to just have a standalone bill here, just because it would get the money out a lot quicker, the tier 1 money?
So I can give you a short update on that USDA program. Sign up started on May 26th. And it was said that as soon as your application was processed, you could expect to see the money in a week. My application was all signed and sent in on the 29th, I think it was, of May. I have not received any payment. So I went online to do the tracking of this program. And as of Sunday night, there had not been a single payment in the state of Vermont on this program. And that's where it is. I don't know. It was supposed to be another update yesterday. I did not get a chance to get on and look for it. If we might want to, if we get to the point we want to talk more about that, well, maybe we should contact Wendy Wilson to find out why the state of Vermont hasn't processed these yet. Other states are sending money out right and left, but
It's interesting that you say that, Rodney. That phone call that I got while we were meeting was from Wendy Wilton wanting to talk to me about it. So I'll call her back at some point and try and get an answer. All right. John, yes,
To answer
Mike.
John's second question, I think there's an opportunity for you to do a standalone bill. I think that's what the Senate committee is intending. They actually had a caucus yesterday where Senator Starr said that they were going to vote the bill out today or tomorrow, and that he intended it to be standalone to get it moved quickly. So I don't know what your leadership intends. That's up to them.
And in part of my conversation with Mitzi, she was open to the idea of having a standalone bill to make it, to get it out quickly. All right, next on the list is Tom again, and then John Bartholomew.
Madam Chair, I'm in a dilemma here in my mind, a dichotomy, you might say, a trichotomy between what Rodney said and John and Vicky's passion. John said something, Rodney said we should get the money out as quickly as possible. We all agree with that. And I think the 20 million ask would help in that area. But John's made a great point, which is it's unlikely that any committee or any agency is going to have any money left over. On Thursday night, I had a conversation with two of our colleagues in other committees who are going to increase their ask for childcare. Why? Because they believe that's the best way to activate economic activity in the state of Vermont, is to get women back working and get childcare going through additional aid. They don't think there's enough money being put into childcare. So that battle's already started. And Vicky's passion is correct. These farmers are in trouble. They 50 million wasn't enough, and now the 20 million is just so low. I don't know. I can't think of a way. I'm worried if we ask for the 50, we're going to be slapped down quickly. I'm worried if we ask for the 20, our constituents, the farmers, processors, are just it's a slap in the face.
So regarding the extra money, the speaker said, she's now in conversations about how much money will be available to invest in the pressing priorities. And she mentions agriculture as one of the pressing priorities. So, you know, I mean, who knows how it's going to sugar off? I just don't know. It's a source of great frustration to me. And after we do all this, we're going to have to be probably going into a committee of conference with the Senate. So, you know, that'll be another battle. John Bartholomew.
I also hear and sympathize and agree with Vicky's passion about this. And if there was a way this committee could get the money by drawing a line in the sand, I would say, yes, that's useful, but I'm not sure. I mean, it feels like we don't really have the power, and maybe that wouldn't be the best approach. We need, and what I'm finding really frustrating is if we were in Montpelier trying to work on something like this, we would be, our committee chair would have us working through lunches, and we might be here in the evening until we get it done. And here we've got this process where the clock runs out, we go away, and then 3 days later we're back, and it feels like we're not making any progress. I feel like we need to pass something and get it moving. So I'm feeling real frustration about how we can make progress.
Well, we're going to have to do something, I would say, by the end of today, which is 12:30. We have an hour and a quarter to figure this out. Our recommendation needs to be to approach by tomorrow. So we're going to have to finalize this and do it now. So Sharon's hand is up. Sharon.
I guess I'm kind of echoing what John O'Brien said, in that if I were queen, the farmers and the processors and non-dairy farmers would have this money right now. And Rodney, I'm really sorry to hear that you still haven't gotten the money that was supposed to take a week to hit your bank account. I'm inclined to be pragmatic, because getting money to the farmers is my first priority. I am willing to be flexible with the message that we are going to keep pushing for a sufficient amount. And so I'm definitely willing to compromise, but through this process, and you know, when we come back in August and all of that, I'm going to keep advocating for those farmers, because if our choice is between nothing or 20 million, then nothing isn't going to do anybody any good. And this really sucks. Pardon my French. But I want to get money to our farmers as soon as possible, and keep advocating for a sufficient amount, our farmers and our processors. So that's where I stand. I was too upset to write my weekly legislative update after Friday, so I've just been brooding on this all weekend. But I have to be practical.
Thanks, Sharon. Rodney, your hand is up, and then Vicky. And John, is your hands up again? John Bartholomew? Okay. Rodney, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know some of you guys talked to members of the Probes Committee. I did not get a chance to do that. So if we just submit the bill we've been working on, asking for the 50 million, will they just whittle it down or just not move it? Or do you have any idea what they would do with it? I mean, again, like I fully understand what Vicky is saying, but I also, here I just some is better than none. So, I mean, I don't want to jeopardize the chance that the bill's not gonna move if we hold out. And that's kind of like what some others have been saying. So, that's where I stand. And, you wait till August, well, this particular bill, if you're not producing milk, you don't qualify for it. So, you're probably gonna have a lot less applicants if you wait too long.
So I've heard a number of people say, and I'll just do kind of a straw poll here. I'm hearing people say that they want to get the money out as quickly as possible. So that's true, right? Thumbs up, generally, thumbs up. Yeah, quickly as possible. Vicky? I can't see your thumb.
It's not up.
You don't think the money should get out as quickly as possible?
I do. No,
Oh,
absolutely.
okay.
I do think that, but I don't think we should compromise.
Well, I don't know that we have a choice.
I feel like we do. And I feel like it's our job to advocate. I just can't, I can't ask for less than the 50. And I think we just keep our proposal as we've worked on and then just let the probes deal with it. And it's not going to slow it down. They'll just say, hey, 50 is not going to work, folks, so well. But if we say 50, this was our work, this was our proposal, we've worked with the agency, we've heard from the farmers multiple times, and let them deal with it. But they're not, I don't see that they'll slow it down. They'll just say, well, here's what we offer. But I want it to be out as soon as possible, but I can't say less than 50. I just can't.
Okay, so I think I asked Mike O'Grady this question in the last couple of meetings, and I think I remember the answer, but I want to double check. So Mike, are we allowed to do findings in this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this conversation has helped me think more about that, and I would say that perhaps what we can do, and Vicky, I know you might not like this, but maybe what we can do is talk about what we've heard from dairy farmers and in terms of findings and what the original proposal was from the agency and how they had applied some really serious good thought to how the money should be allocated to farmers and processors. So include some of that so that a PROPS understands what the need is. And I think many of them do already, but so they understand what the need is, and that we can mention in the findings that the original ask was $50 million, and that we understand that, the amount that may be ultimately available to us is unclear at this point, and that we appreciate their efforts in trying to get us as much, not us, but dairy farmers, as much money as possible. So would everybody be interested in doing some findings in order to help us make our case to the Committee on Appropriations? Yeah, do I see? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Does that mean today? Have them drafted and ready to go today?
well, we can work on it overnight potentially, but it would be good to have, I don't know, maybe we can have a really quick meeting at the end of the day today, if we can pull some of this together.
Could we add to those findings the fact that information about where this money is going to go immediately into our economy?
Yeah,
That the grain vendors are sitting on who knows how much now. It's been 2 weeks. They're probably sitting on 3 million in unsecured debt, and that this is going to be saving not just those farms, but everybody that they owe money to.
yeah. So I've got John O'Brien and then John Bartholomew, and then Sharon, if you want to say more, you can after that. John O'Brien.
Since I'm someone who likes rhymes, I think we should ask for 55. So 55 keeps ag alive, and make it the original 50, and then add 5 that's split what we agree on between non-dairy agriculture and the VHCB Weed Lab ask, and then put in, I think what others and Mike have been saying, that or a percentage therein, if when it's probably undoubtedly going to be reduced, but at least that way, it's going to be up to appropriations, but it won't change at least the sort of dollar numbers by group that we're asking for,
Okay, well,
if that can be done.
yeah, okay, we can think more about that. It's kind of giving me a headache, but that's all right. John Bartholomew.
I still have a concern if we send it forward with 50 million and we don't acknowledge the fact that we sort of think we're going to end up with less. Won't we lose control on how the amount is allocated if we don't acknowledge that and come up with a way? If less money is going to go out.
No, I like your percentage idea, and if Mike O'Grady thinks he can draft that.
But Vicky seemed to prefer that we just say 50 million period, which I understand. I understand why she's there, but I am concerned that if we do that, then we won't have any control over a lesser amount and how it's allocated.
Well, I think that we can talk about in the findings, or the findings, the amount that we would like to see there. And maybe is everybody in favor of doing, I think I asked for findings, a thumbs up, and you all said yes. Yeah. So in terms of findings, I think it would be good to include the original ask, which was 50 million, which was determined by a thoughtful process on the part of the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. We've also heard that it is not going to solve the farmers' debt, the farmers' problems, but it will be a help. What else have we heard? What else did I say? We understand that there might be some, our allocation was 20 million in the first tier, and that there may be some additional funds available, and that if that is the case, we would like that, but ultimately, the numbers that we're presenting are based on a $50 million figure, and that if there is less than that available, that it be, and we should specify that 40 million was for dairy farmers and 10 was for processors, and that if there is less available, that it then be determined on a percentage basis. Are these sounding good to you all? Rodney, your hands up. What would you like to say? You're muted, Rodney.
I was just wondering if we should, if we're going to offer possible percentage, should we include the amounts that we originally were talking about to each size farm, so that if they do a percentage, it gets a fair percentage for everyone, or not just say, well, we'll give it all to the big farms or stuff like that.
Don't you think it should be? Don't you think it should be across the board?
So when we say we originally asked for 50 million, and it was X number of dollars for large farms, X number of dollars for medium farms and small farms, certified small farms. So can we include those numbers in the findings so that if they do end up doing a percentage, hopefully it's a fair percentage across everybody and not just say, well, you got 20 million, so we'll give it to the larger farms. And see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. And I think that those numbers are actually in the bill. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the
Yeah,
numbers,
yes, they are. But
Alright,
you could, in the findings could reference that if the 50 million is reduced, that the maximum grant amount per farm or processor be reduced in the same percentage, to provide for equality across farm type and class.
yes. And do we want to include, we know that, that in this, the small and medium farms were, had a little bit of an advantage over the large farms, that there was a recognition that the large farms were probably better able to take advantage of programs like PPP and maybe ultimately the idle plan, but so there's a little bit of an advantage for the small and medium farms. Should we include some kind of language about that? I'm not wed to it, but
So what is the advantage?
when they figured out the numbers, I remember Allison Eastman saying that the large farms were not as were not treated quite the same way, and that small and medium farms had a little bit of an advantage. I
Right,
mean,
so
we
they
don't have
didn't,
to-
right, the amount was based on number of farms as opposed to like basically the percentage of each category as against the total
Mhm.
number of farms. But if you went with milk production, the large farms produce a greater percentage of the milk. So
Right.
that's why by basing it not on milk production, but on number and type of farm, that's how small farms and medium farms get an advantage. Really, the small farms get the advantage.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it, Mike. Thank you for being way more articulate than I was. Yes. John Bartholomew, your hands up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering, some of the stuff like how the money would be allocated by percentage at a lower rate, that doesn't feel like a finding. That seems like more language in the bill.
It would be in the appropriations too. It would say in fiscal year 2021, 50 million is appropriated from the CRF for implementation of the Dairy Assistance Program under Section 1. If the 50 million appropriation is reduced prior to enactment, the maximum amount award for each farm type and processor type shall be reduced by a similar percentage or the same percentage in reduction of the overall appropriation.
So are you saying that it would not be a finding, it would be in another section?
I would put it in the actual appropriation of the money from the CRF.
Okay. I just asked because it kept coming up and it sounded like we were going to have that as one of the findings, and that didn't make sense to me.
I think you could do it in both. You could put it in the findings, but then for it to have any weight, to have any operation, you would have to put it in an appropriation section, I think. And frankly, it'll get to appropriations, and appropriations will do what you asked to do. They'll appropriate an amount of money and then reduce the amounts by a certain amount. Or you get the Senate bill and you work with the Senate to reconcile that bill.
Okay. Now, Rodney, is your hand up again? Or did you just not lower it?
Not again.
Okay,
Yeah.
then Tom and then John O'Brien. Yeah,
Just to give a little good news in this issue is the last letter I received from Agrimac the end of last week was that they're predicting the price of milk to start going up, possibly up to 18 in next month or two.
okay, well, that is good news. And, you know, as I said before, this is like a bridge, bridge over troubled water. John O'Brien is next, and then Tom, and then Vicky.
Mike might know this or JFO, but it seems in the findings, it would be interesting to know, since this is all about economic harm and the government's ability to somewhat reimburse business sectors for that harm, what percentage, what's the ratio between what that, say, dairy industry, the economic harm there, to what, say, this bill, you know, towards making them whole? Is it, you know, 10 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on the dollar, and how that compares to, say, the restaurant industry or other or hospitals, other industries in Vermont that have been hit so hard too? Because if we could show that dairy's percentage-wise getting a lot less than other hard-hit industries, that would be, we could make a case for why we should get closer to the 50 million.
I don't know if that type of analysis has been done. I can ask JFO if they have that, but I don't have it.
Thanks, Mike. Tom.
Would it be appropriate in the findings to, I like what John said, but if we have to do research for 2 weeks to find out what he's saying is correct or not, couldn't we just say that this money will stay in Vermont and it's going to go, pretty much what Sharon said, it's going to be going to seed feed dealers in every county and every town? Rather than try to research it, what John is saying, I don't think that information is immediately available. It'd be great to have it in there as a finding, but I don't think we can get it in time.
I like that, Tom. I like that, and I think Sharon did mention it, and so we're thinking about the findings now, and we've had some good thoughts. Vicky?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, I had a Marine Corps son. He stands up for those who can't stand up for themselves. So here I am. Again, I just want to say I'm not comfortable with the wording of if, like if less is available. I just don't want to say if. I just want to just state our case as a ag committee and let them figure out the if. But in the meantime, with the findings, I think it's an excellent way to state our case and say it fairly desperately and passionately, in the sense of their milk prices plummeted to half of what they were getting when it was just starting to increase, and they're getting their feet under them. I mean, this literally knocked the feet right out of our farmers. Their expenses were continuing and their profits went completely down to nothing. So, I mean, I think findings are there to say this was how desperate they were hit by COVID, when everything just plummeted. They had to dump milk. They weren't reimbursed for that. So I just want to see some passion in the findings, if that's okay.
Okay, well, so some of that I like. The farmers were indeed looking at $20 milk. And this was directly due to COVID and the closure of food service, restaurants, and schools, that milk prices plummeted. I'm not sure that farmers weren't paid for the milk that got dumped.
I'm
I-
not sure either, but some weren't, I don't think.
Yeah, I think they were, but that's a question for Diane Bothfeld. And so I don't know that we want to, I don't know that we can get an answer quickly enough.
Well, that's
Vicky?
fine. That doesn't need to be in it per se, but I'm just kind of painting the picture of what they were dealing with, throughout March and April and May.
Okay, yep. So any other ideas in terms of findings? Mike, I'm assuming that you've been taking notes and that you're potentially going to come up with some findings for us.
Yep.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to include? John O'Brien, I see your hand is up.
Well, even without comparing it to other business sectors, we know, I mean, that we've heard a bunch of statistics like, didn't Mateo say that it's gone down 50 to 90%, the value added business. And right, we know percentage of milk, or like the dairy farmers, Carolyn, that you and Vicky talked to, where they're losing 65,000 a week. So, or their milk checks that much less. So we certainly have some pretty stark figures out there we could throw into the findings.
Yeah, and I like the idea, John, that you included some language about the processors, because they were part of this too. And I think I heard Mateo say that he had lost $600,000, or Jasper Hill had lost that much in net income. If I can find his note, my notes from him.
So I'm being requested to go to Senate Ag.
Okay,
I probably won't be able to start drafting this until around 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Because of other meetings that I have. So I can have something for you tomorrow, if that works, or I
Okay.
can send it out overnight if you would like that.
Yeah, why don't you send it out overnight? And then I don't know if we're going to be able to schedule a meeting for tomorrow or not to give our final approval to this. But you've got the basic concept in terms of the, I know Vicky's going to be mad at me, but the percentage piece, and that whole concept. So maybe if you can send it overnight, we can comment and
Okay.
get back to you individually. It's not going to be a reply to all. So, and then maybe we can be able to schedule some time tomorrow morning. When are we on the House floor tomorrow morning?
We don't go till 2 tomorrow.
Oh, good. Maybe Mike Farrant can figure out a way that we could have a meeting tomorrow morning. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so, Mike, thank you very much. Mike
Okay.
O'Grady, thank you. And
Bye.
bye. Thank you, as always. Okay. I'll continue to take notes if people have some more ideas about findings. John O'Brien, your hand is up. Do you want to speak again?
No, just forgot it.
Okay. Okay, so I think we've come up with some good findings, and we can review what Mike O'Grady produces for us. John O'Brien brought up earlier the talk about working lands and other farms, and I think ultimately we're going to have to deal with this. I think I'd like to talk about the other farms first of all. I know that we've heard about farmers markets. I saw a report on WCAX over the weekend, and farmers are probably not taking in as much money as they typically would. And the general comment was that there just weren't enough people attending the farmers markets, or not as many as they typically would have. I've gotten an email from one of my constituents who has a lot to do with the Brattleboro Farmers Market. And what they are finding is that some of the restrictions are maybe still a little bit onerous, especially compared to what's happening with grocery stores. And that, you know, my understanding is that they no longer have to do pre-order. Correct me if I'm wrong, committee members, but that they are, you know, the concept of wearing masks. And I have to say, I was out the other day when it was about 90 degrees and I had my mask on. I thought I was going to asphyxiate, but I continued to wear it. So I'm hoping that farmers markets are going to be able to pick up, you know, as we loosen up some of the restrictions and turn that spigot, that things are going to loosen up a little bit and the farmers markets will be more successful. I've also heard that farm stands are doing really well and that CSAs are sold out. I get that not everybody's doing great. But I also understand, and maybe I'm wrong about this, we can hear from folks, but probably not before we get this bill out, that some of these folks aren't going to know until the fall whether they've actually lost net income, and that you know, that ultimately there might be an opportunity for them to take advantage of some programs if they do lose out directly because of economic harm due to COVID. But we can have some conversation right now as to what you all are hearing regarding this as well. So the Senate has included money for other farms, and I'm just wondering how you all feel about that. So hands up. Vicky?
You're still calling on me. Thank you.
Of course.
I'm making some tension tamer tea, by the way.
Oh, good.
Anyway, I personally feel like the 7 million that the Senate asked for is too much, and I don't want to like not support these farms by any means, but the dairy is just so much more hit in ways that were beyond their control, and these other farmers are doing their best, going online and a lot of other things. So anyway, I just feel like the 7 million is a little bit high.
Well, and that's the question. Do we include anything for them in our bill, or do we I'm sorry, I'm being distracted. Mike Farrant just sent me a chat saying that there's a time slot available that we could meet at 11 o'clock tomorrow if you all would like to. That might be helpful. So keep in mind, Vicki, that anything we include for the other farms would, you know, be taken away from dairy. So, you know, this is part of the conversation. Yep. So John O'Brien, your hand is up.
Wait, I'm just a second. Sorry, there are two conversations going. I think since this is all about economic harm, if non-dairy farms have been hit hard and they have economic harm, then I'm all in favor of them getting some money. And I know the speaker and it appears the Senate are big supporters of that non-dairy sector. So, but right, I agree with Vicki in that 7 million of that percentage of 30 seems high, given the economic harm we know has hit the dairy and value-added sectors.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts? Terry,
I'm just thinking that if we try to include all of those small vegetable farms, unless we've got this all planned out in advance, how are we going to possibly know how many there are? And how are we going to distribute that money? And it's going to complicate this whole process quite a bit.
okay. Yes, any other comments about this? All right, I'm not seeing any additional hands.
Hold it.
Tom, there you go. Tom,
As a possibility, what happened here? I lost you. All right.
you did?
Well, no, I'm back. It just
Okay.
went away for a minute. When I started to speak, I don't know, the screen went blank. I don't know. I'm wondering if we could, for those farms, if they've experienced loss, and Terry's right, it's going to be a nightmare to come up with who's who and what's going to be what and what our loss is going to be. And I think maybe if we want to put them in the in the second tier, let's look at them for the second tier, and say if there's any available money, let's give some to them. I don't know, the 7 million is high, but let's give some to them in the second tier. But right now, let's focus on dairy and dairy processors.
Right, and I've meant to call Mike Marcotte to see if there were some, a part of the ACCD program that maybe they could take advantage of. Vicky, your hand was up, but now it's down.
Well, you just answered it. I thought, well, maybe there could be money in some programs, like you just said, that they could be applying for at some point.
Okay, thanks. So I'm getting the picture that we are not going to include the other farms in this particular version of our bill. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Do I see thumbs up? Okay, yeah. Apparently viewers can't see the little yellow thumbs up, so the real thumbs up would be better. Okay. All right, yeah. All right, now I'm seeing thumbs up. All right. So then the other piece of conversation here is about working lands, which we all love. Some of us were actually on the committee when it was created. And I think that there's something to be said for including it to help farmers transition, but I just don't know if this is, given the lack of money that we're potentially going to be dealing with, I don't know if this is the vehicle for it. So any comments about that? John O'Brien, and then Tom, then Terry, then Rodney.
Carolyn, what was the Senate's ask in that sort of VHCB?
It was $200,000, and it wasn't for working lands. It was
What
for
was-
VHCB.
Which would be for what?
I'm assuming, I didn't quite catch it, but I'm assuming that, and maybe if somebody else did, please speak up, but I assume it was for farm and forest viability. That
And-
program,
Oh, okay. So it's an existing program,
yeah.
and what do we think
And-
about that?
Well, what do we think about that? Whatever we add to this will be coming away from the dairy farmers and the producers. I mean, the processors rather. So we can think about it. We can talk a little bit. Why don't I go around the room here, and then we can if you formulate some ideas about the money for VHCB, you can speak up. Tom, and then Terry, and then Rodney.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there seems to be a strong emotional support for working lands from this committee and more importantly, from other folks out there, including leadership. And I think if we not include it, they will include it. So let them do that.
Thanks, Tom. Terry?
This morning I got a rather lengthy email from Will Stevens wondering what my thoughts were on supporting working lands, and I'll have to read it again because I wasn't sure how we were going to be doing this, whether this was, I knew we always support working lands and we recommended it be in the budget for extra money, but I wasn't sure if he was referring to just that or the actual the COVID relief funds too. So I guess I'll have to just listen and find out what we plan to do with it. But I told him I was always a supporter of working lands and still would be, but I'm not sure I want to take away from dairy to support working lands, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Rodney?
I think I'm unmuted. Yeah. I really would like to see some put into working lands to help the farmers that are not going to survive. There's going to be several farms, no matter what we do. The money's not going to get there fast enough. Not going to be enough. And even if every single dairy farm was to survive, we're still in the same problem we've had for 40 years. And some of them won't survive that either. So, I mean, I think at some point, and I know it's not going to be in this bill, and I'm not going to fight the issue, but we really need to be thinking about agriculture as a whole and not just dairy farms. That's all I gotta say.
Yep, I appreciate that, Rodney. And I guess the question is, how much would you propose including? And it seems like one of the most valuable things for dairy farmers would be how, to help with transitioning to some other form of farming. And I have no idea what, how much that would amount to, what would it cost? So if you have some ideas about what you would want to include, just keep in mind that whatever it is would basically come off the top from helping dairy farmers, cross the bridge potentially to $18 milk.
Well, I don't have a dollar figure in my head, and I don't think we can delay this bill to really dig into that issue. It may be a tier 2 issue. But one of the things that happened with me, and I'm sure it's happened with the other 14 or whatever number of farms that have gone out in May, you didn't get what you could have got for the cows before COVID, because everyone was facing a price crash. They didn't have a lot of money, so you lost money on your cows. Now you do not have any income coming in from any other source until you get transitioned to some other form or get a job or whatever you got to do. But the bills didn't go away. The loans didn't go away. You still got, you know, you still got to make money somehow. And unless you file bankruptcy, or this is where sometimes farmers do start getting into mental issues. I'm not going to say suicide, but that could be an alternative for some. And I think there's room for other commodities to be able to survive in the state of Vermont. And some people just need a little, it may only be technical help, but there is, you know, that comes at a cost, but you know, it may not have to be much. I mean, you know, I'm not thinking that we've got to go buy people a whole new set of equipment to change their production line, but maybe just some help to figure out what they could do and how to market it. But you know, I think that's a broader discussion than we can get done tonight.
Well, it looks like maybe we'll be able to meet tomorrow at 11. I just have to ask permission from Catherine Lavasser to see if we can have that 11 o'clock. Is everybody available tomorrow at 11? Yeah. Okay. Good.
So part of my plan is to be selling feed. So if the weather's good, I may have to sign on the tractor.
Well, it's supposed to be cloudy here tomorrow. I don't know what it's doing in your neck of the
Well,
woods.
it's supposed to be sun shining today, but it already had one rain shower.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got probably about 50 acres of hay on the ground.
Rodney,
Lord.
get your staff working on that.
I wish I was there. I'd come help you. I can drive tractor.
All we need right now is the sun. That's all we need, and it won't come out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mother Nature, Mother Nature.
I
I just
know.
don't understand in today's times and technology and all the stuff that these weather forecasters have, how they can be wrong so much of the time.
All right. Now is not the time for me to say that I got my degree in college from oceanography and meteorology. Okay, so I will tell you all that the last couple of days have been really hard. Getting these phone calls from people who are really desperate has been tough. And, you know, these are the people who work the hardest. And sorry. I think we're on track to come up with a good bill, a good proposal that balances reality. Vicki, you might not be happy, but I think that we have to be pragmatic and we have to be realistic, knowing that we might not reach our goal, but that we have done the absolute best we could to help out the people who are really hurting the most at this point. There are so many worthy causes that we're hearing about at this point, you know, in terms of all sorts of areas. And, but I think that from the standpoint, you know, and we've heard that foresters are struggling too, and I haven't even heard numbers about them. So I think at this point, we just move forward with the bill. I think that what I've heard overall is we want to limit it to dairy producers and processors, that we will be keeping in mind other farmers in the future, and we will be keeping in mind working lands as we move forward. Something that Rodney said, asked, sort of triggered me to actually look up Farm First again for farmers who are experiencing a mental illness and maybe suicidal thoughts, and to just say that their Farm First 24/7 hotlines number is 877-493-6216. I'll say that again, 877-493-6216. We hope you don't have to use it, but they really encourage anybody who is feeling badly to give a call. They can help in many different ways. So is there anything else you want to add at this point? We have 20.
I'd like to bring something else up.
Yep, go ahead, Rodney.
The processors. I'm out for helping out the small processors, but the larger processors like Agrimark and DFA and some of these others, anytime they've had a loss, which they're going to have a loss out of this, there's no doubt, but they've always charged it back to the farmers. And I've heard that even some co-ops have already started the COVID surcharge to make up for their loss. So, I mean, if we give them money as well, they're going to be double dipping. I mean, they have a mechanism to recoup their loss through the farmers. So, I mean, I think that it would be more important to get the money to the farmers and the small processors versus trying to get it to the big processors.
Okay, again, I apologize for my phone. Don't people know I'm on the floor? I'm in the State House right now. So Rodney, how would you kind of delineate this? I know we have an amount for people who process more than 500,000 pounds per day. How could we figure this out? Oh, Rodney, you're muted.
I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there's like 5 tiers, 4 tiers, 5 tiers on processing. Remember?
Right.
Maybe just stop after the top 3. I mean,
so let me see if I can find that quickly.
I mean,
Okay.
I've already heard that some, and even in the world of organic, they took on too much milk 2 or 3 years ago, and they started losing money, and they put on a what they call an inventory reduction fee that we've been paying for over 2 years, trying to help them backfill their mistakes, I guess as you'd say. But I mean, it's common practice for these bigger co-ops to recoup their losses from farmers, and I just, that's all my opinion. But
So
I mean, I know
that-
somebody like Jasper Hill and stuff don't have that capability, but
Mhm. So I see that there are 6 tiers. There's under 500 pounds a day. There's 500 pounds to 10,000 pounds. It's probably 9,999. 10,000 to 49,999. 50 to 99,9999. 100,000 to 499,999, and then above 500,000 pounds. So you know, we really haven't had a chance to take too much testimony on this, and this has to be, keep in mind that it has to be linked to actual economic harm and actual losses. So I don't know quite how to handle this, Rodney, right at this point.
Well, it's just a suggestion. Maybe we wouldn't,
Yeah,
maybe we wouldn't have to give them as much, lower the amount that goes to them or something.
yeah. I mean, when you look at this, it's, you know, the top people over 500,000, the maximum they could get is $185,000, whereas somebody producing or using 10,000 to almost 50,000 pounds would be at 97. So it's a little bit skewed toward the smaller guys, I think. Terry, do you have any ideas? Your hand is up.
Well, I'm thinking if we include in our provisions that it has to be a Vermont company, because Agrimark Cabot is based in Methuen, Mass, and DFA is somewhere out long ways from Vermont, even though their plant is in St. Albans. It's not a Vermont company. So that, you know, if we could eliminate those two, and like Rodney said, like Agrimark, if they're losing money, they just put a surcharge on your every time they stop at your farm. They have ways of recouping losses quite easily at the farmer's expense. They may be a co-op, but they are working for themselves, trust me. I paid into it for a long time. So if we could eliminate those two as not even Vermont companies, even though it's Cabot and it says it's Cabot, it's, you know, they're based in Methuen, Mass. That's where all the milk checks come from. And, you know, that way we could support Monument Farms, Thomas Dairy, you know, and the local cheesemakers.
Okay, and Terry, so you said DFA, Agrimark, and was there another one?
That's the only one. I don't know where the
Organic Valley,
go to.
Organic Valley, Horizon.
Right. They're not based in Vermont, so.
Okay. Somebody's phone ringing. Maybe Rodney's was, okay. It's like I've been hearing ringing bells. I'll ask Mike O'Grady if that's legal for us to do. I just don't know. It may be, it may not. Terry?
I mean, if we don't say that, then, I mean, honestly, who are we going to end up paying? I mean, it could be, you know, Walmart. I don't know. They could all claim they had losses in Vermont, but they're somewheres else. So I think you have to kind of make it clear.
Yeah. Okay. John Bartholomew, your hand's up.
I'm just wondering though, this piece about having to demonstrate a loss to get funds, doesn't that take care of it? I mean, I don't know about the Walmart piece, but if you are able to recoup your losses from the farmer, then you don't have any losses, and to claim that you were harmed would be the same as fraud. Doesn't that fix it? Just the fact that they've got to demonstrate a loss?
Well, I think we'd prefer that they not try and recoup it from the farmer, but that's a good point. How about if I ask Mike O'Grady about that?
But Rodney says that they do and will and are recouping their losses from the farm, so they have no harm and therefore can make no claim without fraud. That's how I see it.
Okay. Other thoughts? Rodney, is your hand up again?
Yeah,
yep,
it might be.
Okay, good.
No, I agree with John. However, they can demonstrate they have a loss, and they don't have to say, well, we have a mechanism to recoup it. And, you know, if they get 100 and some odd $1,000, but they've lost 5 million or something, that, you know, again, it's a drop in the bucket, but still, a smaller operator would have a better chance of staying in business with a smaller amount of money than, you know, Agrimark and DFA and Organic Valley. They're not going to go out of business because of this. They're just going to recoup their money elsewhere. I mean, that's just the way they are.
So I had an email from Jackie Folsom. I hope she doesn't mind me quoting me. I'm sure she's listening. She says farm dump, and this is the title, was the subject was dumping milk. Says farmers in other areas sometimes weren't paid if they were independents, but cooperatives have been charging the farmers a COVID cost for the cost of the dumping. I believe Agrimark Cabot has that on the milk check. So that is helpful. Yep. And there's also a request that we put into the findings that dairy adds $2.5 billion to the Vermont economy annually, which I think is a good suggestion. John O'Brien, your hand is up.
Just following up on what Rodney said, I mean, I think there might be room here for sort of chopping 1 or 2 million off those top value added processors and moving it to, whether it's Working Lands or VHCB, to, I think Rodney had a great point on farms are going to go out of business. Dairy farms are going to go out of business. And if we can transition them to stay in agriculture, then that money in some ways is just as valuable as paying bills. So I don't know if there's a way for us to slot that into this bill, but I think that would be important.
Okay, well, if we're working on percentages here, how do you think that works? I mean, it's really hard. It gets murky. It gets hard to figure out. I'm assuming both DFA and Agrimark process more than 500,000 pounds of milk a day. So the total would be $370,000.
I think we heard there were 4 processors who are above that 500,000.
Yeah, are any of them in Vermont? Are any of them Vermont companies?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt any of them are Vermont companies.
Okay. So what did I say? 370. I'm doing math on the fly, which I'm never crazy about. So that'd be $740,000 potentially. That could go someplace else. Hold on one second. Yeah, so I can't believe I got that right. $740,000. What do you think about the idea of allocating some of that to Working Lands and VHCB? I want to hear from people like Vicky, who felt so strongly about dairy getting everything. Vicky?
Yeah, thank you, Carolyn. I still feel like dairy should get everything. I feel like these other groups will get some money, and deservedly so. But the crisis literally is a crisis for the dairy farmers, and our first priority is for that. I think that sector.
John Bartholomew?
I agree with Vicky. I think it should all go to dairy. And one concern I have with Working Lands is that board is pretty much keyed into leveraging investment income. And I don't know how well they are prepared to look at farmers that need to reinvent themselves. They might be able to do a great job, but we can't be sure that that's where the money would go to actually help real people that need it to move forward with their lives. And I think that's what this money's for.
Okay. Rodney, I see your hand is up.
Yeah.
Rodney?
So just to finish off on the subject, the beef prices have crashed because slaughterhouses have shut down, the big ones because of COVID. Produce prices of people that couldn't find people to pick their products because of COVID, they couldn't get the people here. It's delayed some of the vegetable plantings this year because they couldn't get the people here. You know, there all forms of agriculture are hurting. And I think that it's, and again, I don't think we can do it in this bill, but I think at some point we got to realize that agriculture is more than dairy. And we just, you know, I think I understand the fact that maybe dairy farmers can put up the cause that they're hurting worse than other commodities, but I don't know. You know, local beef markets. You know, if you have a beef cow in your backyard and you get it to slaughter and then you take it to, you know, advertise it online, you're going to make out all right. But you know, people that are actually in the beef business are taking a hit because they can't move their product. And the vegetable people as well, and I'm sure other commodities. I mean, even maple syrup. We supplied a big restaurant with syrup, and we have not been able to sell any for since this whole thing, since restaurants stopped. I mean, that's a fair chunk of money that we're not receiving, that we're never going to receive. Even when they open up, they'll start buying syrup again, but they're not going to buy the syrup that they, for the last 2 or 3 months, that they would have. And so you got every product across the board that have in some way or another been affected by this. And I just want everyone to know that. And but again, I think that's a broader, longer discussion than what we can do to get into this bill. And you know, I'm gonna shut up now.
No, don't shut up. But I think what you should do, Rodney, is turn all that maple syrup into those delicious graham maple donuts. And I'm just beginning to lose the weight from those things. Okay, Terry,
Well, we're
you're
working on that, but funny thing is, we had another person that lives in town that has a vendetta against my son. So you know, he's trying to put him out of business. So we'll see how that goes.
wow. Good luck. Those donuts are pretty irresistible. Terry Norris, your hand is up. Terry.
Well, I just wanted to point out one of the fundamental differences in dairy and the rest of the farming is that dairy can't set their own price. I mean, if you're selling vegetables, you're selling beef, you can charge whatever you want, supply, demand, whatever. But dairy is getting paid what USDA or whoever sets that price decides you're going to get paid. You can protest, you can do all kinds of stuff. That is still what you're going to get. And that's why they're losing money. I mean, all of these other ones, maple syrup, hey, you want to charge $52 a gallon? You go for it. All of those things, vegetables, same thing. So there is a difference. That's kind of why we fight for dairy.
You can charge $52 a gallon if you don't want to sell any. But when the going price is 40 and you want to charge 52, you're not going to sell your syrup.
Yeah, I hear you, Rodney. But I hear you too, Terry. I think this is the most one of the most frustrating things for me about dairy is that the seller doesn't get to determine how much they charge for their product. I think that's the most insane way of doing business I've ever heard. Yeah, there's a price that the market will bear, so the fluctuation is, but it would be like the federal government coming and saying, yeah, Rodney, you can't charge more than $22 a gallon for your syrup. That's just insane.
Well, very, very true. And I've argued this point for all my life. And, the government, I've always said that the government either has to control the price from the farm to the consumer or get the hell out of the way. And, but they don't. And anything we do today or tomorrow is not going to solve that issue. It's still going to be there, and it's still going to be that way. And not that we, I don't know if anybody in this world will ever solve that problem.
Yeah. So we have 5 or 6 minutes left. John O'Brien's hand just went up. John?
Just throwing this out to the committee. I agree that all this money could go to all dairy. So what you said, Vicky, and John and Terry, but say we lose 50 to 100 farms through this. Is there I'd rather have the money that would have gone to the Agrimarks of the world go to those 50 to 100 farms, somehow looking at their futures, potentially transitioning to something like the Graham Farm's done. And is there any way, I don't know what group would help with that, but if I'd just rather reroute that money to those farms going out of business to try to stay in agriculture somehow, than just say it's all dairy and it goes to Agrimark and DFA. And I don't know if you agree with that.
So I'd like to actually get some clarity around this. If we're going to not do, is it which, if you want to knock the top tier off, that's the over 500,000. Did you also want to do the 100,000 to 500,000? I just don't know who, or do we want to say it's only Vermont processors that can take advantage, people located in Vermont, and so I don't know who they are. I don't know what kind of money that would free up, John O'Brien, and how that would be dispersed. It's just tough to determine this stuff. I'm not necessarily opposed, but I just don't know, how we make that clear. Vicky, your hand is up. Vicky, go ahead.
I'm just noticing on my notes, Carolyn, that I took during that testimony. I forget if it was Secretary Tebbetts or who, but on those top 2 tiers, I had written in the notes, there were 4 farms that qualified for that. And the same with tier 6, 4 farms. Did anyone else write that down?
Yeah, I don't know that it's farms. I think it's
No?
processors.
Oh, okay.
I think it's processors, and 4 is the number that people seem to remember. Maybe I can get clarification. Maybe I can contact Allison Eastman this afternoon and just send out some information on that. But again, I just don't know. I don't know. I'm looking for clarity here, and I feel like it's just getting murkier. So, but maybe we can talk about this again tomorrow if I can get permission to meet. So I'll contact Catherine as soon as we hang up here. Rodney, your hand's up again. Rodney?
So I think, like Terry said, some of the, if we can limit it to Vermont processors that are actually based in the state of Vermont. Because the Vermont farmers and processors are the ones we're supposed to be trying to help. And if that money goes to an out of state based processor, then you're technically helping every farm in their co-op, which could be multiple states. And you know, the 100 and some odd thousand is a drop in the bucket for these big co-ops that would be distributed over multiple state farms. And I agree that if we could limit that to just Vermont based processors, that might, if we can do that, that might solve the problem of how to do this.
Okay, so that'll be, I'll contact Mike O'Grady and find out if we can limit it to only Vermont-based processors. And what was the other question I was going to ask? Oh, I'm going to try and get information about from Allison or the agency in general regarding who those people might be anyway, just so we know. So we're going to try and meet tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Let's see. And hopefully Mike O'Grady will have something for us to look at later this afternoon. And maybe based on what we find out regarding this other money, we might be able to juggle something. But at this point, I'm basically hearing that we want to limit it to, at this point, we want to limit it to dairy producers and processors. And that maybe going forward, we can include other ag, like diversified ag as well. Sharon, your hand is up. This may need to be our last question. Yes, we're over already.
So when you check in with Mike O'Grady and ask about the feasibility of limiting the money to producers that are wholly owned and operating within the state of Vermont, if he says that is not possible, then I think another option might be to simply eliminate the top tier or the top two tiers so that none of the producers are getting more than $127,000. And that'll free up, you know, so if we only had tiers 1 through 4 and eliminated 5 and 6 or something like that, or, you know, I think Rodney may have said something similar to this way earlier. But I like the, you know, Vermont owned, Vermont operating, serving our farmers. You know, another thing that I think about is, are they publicly traded? Are we taking care of shareholders instead of farmers?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Organic
All right.
Valley. Organic Valley is publicly traded.
Okay. All right. I'll ask some questions and then when are we back on the floor? Are we, oh, we're going to have all house caucus. Is that at 3:30? 2? At 2. Okay. So I'll see you.
3:30. It's 3:30.
3:30 today, 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah.
3:30 today. All right, good enough. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll get ready to sign off and we'll hopefully see you at 11 tomorrow for this committee meeting. All right. Thanks. And Mike, if you can take us